Giving you the information you need, this is Inside the News. Here's Guy Wehman, Ben Brunson, and Frank Vernuccio.
Welcome back to Inside the News. Guy Wehman here, along with Frank Vernuccio and Ben Brunson. Now, we're going to let you know, kind of like inside, that this is being taped on Tuesday before the ultimatum is going to run out at 8 o'clock this evening. However, there are still some implications that can go either way, and we're going to explore those with Ben and Frank, because Donald Trump just he said 8 o'clock. Well, that's when that ultimatum's going to run out, but he could kind of wait to make his move maybe 8 o'clock in Wednesday morning. Ben, go.
Well, look, let's start here. We know with Donald Trump that his deadlines are, when he's in the middle of negotiations, he loves to throw out hard deadlines and then move the goalpost as necessary based on what his counterparty is doing or how they're reacting. So if he feels like we're moving towards some type of settlement later this week, he'll hold off and see what happens. But if he comes to the conclusion that whoever's left in charge, and I guess that's a huge question mark, whoever it is we're negotiating with isn't going to do anything other than maintain the historic party line of the Ayatollahs, he will act. And, Iran's going to go dark. The one thing that I'm sure will happen is their grid will be taken down. I do not expect the president to attack their oil infrastructure beyond, I would call it, military-linked targets, because of the impact. That's a two-edged sword, and that would obviously have a negative impact on the price of oil. And you might see the regime in its death throes attacking their own oil structure if they think they're as good as dead. And that's one problem here. That's why the president clearly wants some type of settlement that basically brings the regime down in the process, one way or the other.
Kind of like those red flags is that the person that you're fighting is going to actually do something that they could accuse you of doing, but yet you're the one that's kind of doing that, the kind of switch, kind of like a diversion campaign here, Frank.
Yeah, of course, one of the key questions to all this, the president has mentioned he's negotiating, but we don't yet know who he's been negotiating with. For all we know, he might be negotiating with anti-IRGC forces within Iran about what they're going to do and when they're going to do it. So that's something that we'll have to find out later on. But I think it's clear that there's not a lot of reliable people that the president can negotiate with from the current regime, whatever that regime is. On the other hand, there are folks both outside of Iran and inside of Iran that he could be talking to. Outside of Iran, Pahlavi is quite popular. There's a question of whether his popularity is as significant inside Iran. Inside Iran, there might be folks that we yet do not know that he could be talking to. Then, of course, there's always the question of the Kurds. So there's a multi-party situation. We don't know who he's negotiating with, and I thought he has been quite coy and quite careful when he's talking about negotiating, never mentioning exactly who he's actually negotiating with.
Okay, Ben, NATO. This is a minefield in and of itself, because NATO has not been so helpful, and we're paying the full freight on this thing practically, Ben.
Well, I'll tell you what, the discussion of NATO, current events have brought things to a head and probably accelerated the timeline in my mind. But longtime listeners know that we have talked for years about a coming crisis. And the crisis is not Russia. The crisis is Islam and the growing Islamic control, political control being manifested in especially two countries, the UK and France, maybe Germany as well. Although we'll see what happens if Germany reacts soon enough, they may nip it in the bud. But you have a real possibility, if not high probability, that you're going to have Islamic political control of Britain and France sometime in the next few decades. And that is something we have to think about because both those countries have nuclear weapons. They both have ballistic missile submarines, which have the ability to launch missiles that would have an immense destructive capability anywhere in the world. And we have to start thinking about what happens when these are Islamic controlled countries. Do we want to be in an alliance with them? My vote is a overwhelming no. We do not. And NATO has to start. Maybe we have to start thinking about and use this possibility now to think about reshaping NATO. I think the future of NATO, to the extent it exists, is with Eastern European countries like Poland, Hungary, Romania.
Bingo.
They believe in the future of European civilization. They are willing to fight for their country. The Polish military, I think, is soon to be the strongest military in Europe, challenging only Turkey, with only Turkey challenging them. They take their military seriously. We should take our bases out of Britain, out of France, and move them east into Poland, Hungary, Romania. That's the future. They're in sync with our views and our worldviews. And we might as well take this opportunity now when we've been kicked in the cojones by NATO and given the middle finger by the traditional NATO leadership. We might as well take this opportunity this time to go ahead and make some serious changes and move NATO to the east.
We are already seeing that. J.D. Vance this week is in Hungary talking with Orban and all. And Ben, I believe you're exactly right. You could draw a line on the one edge of Poland and kind of go on down with Hungary and everything on the right side of the map. On the left side of the map, that's the more liberal Islamic side of Europe. Frank?
Yeah, one of the interesting things is that we have seen an attempted suppression of free speech throughout Western Europe. Particularly, you've seen this in the UK. And why does that affect what we're talking about now? It's because the traditional citizenry of Western Europe has risen up in many ways. If you look at the demonstrations that have occurred in the United Kingdom, they have been pretty substantial against the takeover of their governments by the hard left, by Islamists. It's a battle that has to be won. It's not a battle that's going to be fought with tanks and planes. It's a battle that's going to be fought in the newspapers and with attempted censorship of what's going on in those countries. People in the UK, France, Germany, they've risen up in many cases. In Britain, particularly, we've seen massive demonstrations. But the media there has attempted to suppress those stories, and our own media has attempted to suppress them as well. If you get the chance, go on to some news sites, not dealing with the BBC, but others, and see what's going on in the UK. It's fascinating. There are civil wars brewing in those Western European countries, and we need to step in to a great extent, at least in the concept of freedom of speech, and protect that freedom of speech, whether it's on news sites or otherwise.
All right, we've got to take a time out. We're going to be back. Boy, I tell you what, we want to talk about some Artemis here, and that's kind of some fun stuff. And Ben got to witness the launch. And both Frank and I, we were a little bit envious of his position sitting on his porch from all the way from the center of the state, looking to the east and saying, those are our guys. We'll be right back.